Hi everyone, welcome to today's lesson. So what we're going to be doing today is taking your JavaScript a step further, and what we'll be doing is starting to get JavaScript to interact with HTML and CSS elements on a web page, which is the main reason why you learn JavaScript in the first place. And as per usual, on the page below we have all the code that you will need. So if you don't remember it, don't worry, you can basically reference it at any stage. So to do this, what we're going to do now is we're going to take you into Visual Studio Code, which is the same piece of software that we used for the HTML and the CSS course. Now to start off, what we're going to do is create ourselves a boilerplate of a web page, which you can just do by putting the exclamation mark in and pushing return, and that will give you just the basic structure of a code. So the first thing that we want to talk about is where you can actually place code within your web page. So there are a couple of ways to do it. We're going to look at two different ways today. So the first place that you can put code is within the tag script. And within that tag, if for example we put a little bit of code like alert, we might say hello. Okay, so this is JavaScript we learned from last lesson. Now if we want to do that and we save it and then open it up in live server so it comes up on the screen, what you'll notice is that as soon as it opens up, what happens is you get that message coming straight to you. So basically if you put your JavaScript directly into script with no other code, it will automatically run it the instant the page opens. Now the reason why you might want to do that sort of thing is because it allows basically you to get the page to do something like upload some data, or so you might have some drop-down lists or something like that, and you need to get that data from the back end. You can get all those jobs done before the person even opens the page. Now the second way to do it is to actually link it directly into the HTML elements of your choice. So for example, what we might do to start that process off is we might create a button first. Okay, and so we create our button, and let's say we have a button called message. Okay, so this is the information that's going to go on the web page, and if we save it and go back to our web page over here and refresh it, it hasn't refreshed for me, I'm not sure why. Let's try again. Okay, so I'll just save it again, make sure it's saved, and try refreshing. We should have ourselves a message button. Now at this stage, which you know from your HTML and CSS, at this point the button's there, fantastic, but it doesn't do anything, and that's where JavaScript starts to come in. So to be able to get the button to do something, we have to give it an additional property, and that additional property is called onClick. So that means that when we click the button, that we're going to get it to do something. So for example, we might again use the alert, and we might get it to print a message. So for example, we might say how are you? Okay, and basically once you've done that and we save it, we go back to, and I'm going to remove this script here because it's just going to get annoying every time we open the page, it's going to run. Okay, and we can save it and we can go back to our page. Okay, and then hopefully when you click the button, which I just did, it comes up with the message. So that's how you can link an action on the page with specific commands that you're giving it. Now, at this point, it's probably worth noting that obviously this is a very simple piece of code, and you might need to do much more complex things later on as you go along. Now, to be able to do that, what we need to do is because we can do it here by continuing and adding more and more code, but it gets very messy very quickly. And one of the ways that you can actually access your code is by creating a function which then gets called upon the clicking. So if we want to create a function, okay, and if you have a function, we want to give it a name. So we're going to give it the name greeting, okay, and you need to put normal brackets closed and open, and then you need to put curly brackets. Okay, so the curly brackets are basically where the code goes. The brackets here is where you can put additional parameters into the function, which is something we'll talk about later. Okay, and once you have that, then if we take our code and we copy it in here, we created a function that gives us our greeting message. Okay, now to get that message to actually run, now we need to tell it to reference that function. So the way to do that is we can put in the name of the function, greeting, but we also need to put in the brackets there, okay? And those brackets there tell the code that basically I'm referring to, not a word, but I'm actually referring to a function that I want you to run. So I click Save Now, and we go back to our website, and it's not working for me. Let's have a look. Something's not right. I think that's right. That's what the problem is. I've forgotten to put in talking marks to finish off the information, which is why it's not right. Okay, we'll try again, save it, and if we go back to here, we are not making any difference to the code. So the function of the button, we're just referring to it in a different way, and that just means you can keep your script very separate from your HTML, which just makes it easier to read. Now at this point, it's probably worth highlighting a couple of things that you can do within functions. So one of the things that you'll sometimes want to do is that you'll sometimes want to comment on the what the code is actually doing. Now to create a comment, a single line comment, you have two backslashes, and we can put in whatever information we want. This is a comment. Okay. If we run our code again, it shouldn't make any difference to the function of the page, and it doesn't. So that's a way in which we can leave messages for other people. Now that only works for a single line comment, and the reason why is because you've got a front couple of symbols, but no closing symbols. Now, if you have multiple lines, so let's say for example we have this piece of code that we have here, and we don't want it to run anymore because we're trying something else out. To do a multi-line is backslash asterisk, and then to tell it where we up to what point we want to block it out, it's asterisk backslash. Okay, and what that will do is it will mean that that is now all turned into a comment. So that's handy if you're doing, as I said, you've got lots of versions of code that you want to try out at different stages. You want to keep something, or you want to comment on code. Okay, so the next thing we probably want to have a look at with these scripts is also how you actually create variables and a couple of different variable types, and also a little bit on how they work. Okay, so when we have variables, I think in the last lesson we talked about how you declare a variable. So if we want to declare a variable, what you can do is you can put in and declare yourself a variable. Let's and we might give it the name and equals, and we can declare that variable. And we'll put in the name Peter into there, and we've basically declared that variable. Now, if we then come and use it now, okay, Peter, instead of putting quotation marks, we can just put name, and we should get the word Peter when we click the button. Okay, and you can see that's how you can refer to a variable. Now, however, we've done a let variable. Now, a let variable is, by its very nature, a variable that can be altered. So we can reuse that variable many times over. And that's what a let variable is. Now, the default or best practice is to use a const instead of, or a constant instead of a a variable, because basically it's safer. So essentially, if you declare a constant and you try and alter the value, it will cause an error. So basically, you can use constant and you can use variable. Constant should be used in all cases except for when you need to change the value. Okay, so that's basically what a constant is. Now, a couple of things about variables is that, and this is the last concept we're going to cover in this video, is that there are things called global variables and local variables. So let me show you what the difference is. So if we have a global variable, so this and the previous variable that we created are what's called global variables. That means that we can declare it when the page opens, and then it can be used anywhere. Now, if, for example, however, we want to make it a local variable, which means it can only be used within a given function, we can place the declaration of that variable into the curly brackets of the function. So if we do that now, okay, so it's still on the page, okay, and and it still will run quite happily. Now what I'm going, now that I've declared that variable, I might decide that I'm going to go down here and I'm going to have console, actually I'll make it alert, and I'm going to call the name. Okay, so basically what should happen is it should call that value within the constant. Now if we run the code, what will happen is if I run the code now, nothing happens. Now the reason nothing happens is because this constant that's been declared, oh, there's another reason why it might not have run. No, sorry. Okay, here you go. So basically, it's run the alert, and because there's no value there, because it doesn't exist, it just a run code says, oh, you want a pop-up, but the pop-up doesn't say anything. And that's because even though the variable has been declared, it's been declared within a bracket, so therefore it is only useful for the local function. So that's referred to as a local variable or a local constant. So it works the same with variables and constants. Now the reason why this can be advantageous is because it reduces the chances of confusion and conflict. So for example, you can use variable name in two different places on your page for two different purposes, one being global, one being local. They won't conflict. So that actually is an advantage when your code gets more complex. Okay, so that is pretty much all we're going to cover in this lesson. What you need to do to finish off is to go and have a go at a few of the exercises at the end of the page, and we'll catch you in the next video next time. Cheers.